Hey guys, welcome to Health and Fitness The Truth. I'm Christopher McGee. In this video, we're gonna go over how to do the push press. So let's get it done. All right guys, let's get right into the cues for the push press. So cue one, as always, I've got my ledge for the rack right where I want it to set up, right? And that place is just under shoulder height for me. Because when I get under the bar, I want to be able to just straighten my legs in order to back out of the ledge without clanking the bar on the ledge, right? Okay, so the ledge is where I want it. I'm gonna face the rack, and then hand placement should be. Now remember, push press is basically a strict press or an overhead shoulder press, also called military press. But if you're standing and you're getting any umph out of your legs, that's what differentiates this as a push press, right? So my hand placement is gonna be exactly the same as for a strict press slash military press slash standing overhead shoulder press. They are all the same thing, okay? Which means I want my hands pretty much right outside my shoulders. So if I just walk up to the bar right there, that'll be perfect placement for me, okay? And I just wanna make sure that my hands are centered on the bar. And I'm gonna get under it. Now, for convenience of holding the weight as I back out, I might wanna get into a front rack position, like a front rack squat position, just so that it is more easily carried, but I don't want to start my push press from the front rack position because that takes all the tension out of my deltoids, which is what I'm trying to work here, right? Trying to hit those shoulders with tension. So if I get into a front rack just to back out, that's fine, but as soon as I start this exercise, I want to drop my elbows down so that there's tension in my shoulders. The bar is not resting on my shoulders now. Let's take a moment to look at my posture, because that's always a critical part, especially a lift where you're on your feet, throwing weight over your head, as the push press is. So, I want my feet about hip width apart, maybe a little bit wider. On my toes, pointed straight forward, or maybe slightly wide, just depends on your preference. You just wanna make sure that as you drop your weight, your knees aren't caving in, okay? So you wanna make sure you can keep alignment, and where your toes are pointing is an important part of that. I want my pelvis right under my spine, and I want my shoulders back and down. And as I press this weight up, I don't wanna shrug my shoulders. I wanna maintain that back and down posture, okay? Okay, so if I'm ready, I'm gonna load tension into my shoulders, make sure my hands are still centered. Instead of just pressing this weight straight overhead, with the push press, I can load more weight onto the bar because I'm going to be getting a little bit of umph out of my legs. So I'm gonna drop into just like a quarter squat, just a little bit, okay? And I'm gonna use the explosion that I can get coming out of that squat to help push the weight overhead. So it'll look like this. Now, when you're in that quarter squat, you're going to get whatever explosive power you can get out of your glutes and quads, and even your calves. You'll come up into extension through your ankles so that your calves are helping with that movement, but then you're not gonna stay there as you try and press the weight overhead. What you're gonna do is use that to create momentum, and then as the bar is traveling up, you drop under it, okay? So you'll drive, you'll get into extension through your ankles and your knees and your hips to come here, and then you'll drop your weight under the bar as it is traveling up, and you are simultaneously pushing yourself under the bar. And then you land in that same quarter squat that you started in to generate your force, and then you stand up fully from there. So let's look at it again. Starting with good alignment, right? The tension is in my shoulders. I'm not just resting it on my shoulders. There's tension in my shoulders because where I'm holding the bar. I drop, and then I'll press it overhead and drop under the bar, okay? There you go. Okay, and then I come all the way back upright, okay? I'll bring it back down and just do it over. We also want to make sure we have full shoulder mobility so that we are getting our arms all the way overhead without hyperextending the back, okay? If you're hyperextending your back in order to get the weight over, then you're creating an axial load down your spine that's terrible for it, and we want to stay away from that. So if you cannot get your arms all the way straight up vertical without extending your back, then you need to work on that shoulder mobility, and especially the thoracic spine mobility. And the first thing you're gonna look at is your lats being over tight. If you can't get your arms straight overhead with weight without overextending your back, you shouldn't do this exercise until you address that. Okay, from here, as I'm bringing it back down, I don't want to front rack it, right? I want to bring it back down so that there remains tension in my shoulders. So elbows forward. Okay, I don't want to have to lean back over much in order to bring it down, so the tension stays on my shoulders. And by the way, on its way up, your elbows should be aiming forward. They will go wide at the top, but you want to start pointing them forward. Now, when I'm done, if I want, I can just front rack it again. And I'm just gonna walk forward till it runs into the rack. I can drop it onto my ledge because I've set it where it needs to be, and you're done with your push press set. Alright guys, so let's look at the prime movers for the push press. And since you drop into that quarter squat and then try to create that power and can't even come onto your toes, what you're looking at for prime movers is your calves, your glutes and quads, and then of course your shoulders, specifically your deltoids, okay? And more specifically, the medial and anterior branches of the deltoids. Let's start with deltoids for origin and insertion points then. So your anterior deltoid comes off the head and lateral, like third or half of your collarbone, okay? And comes out onto the deltoid tuberosity. And then your medial branch of the deltoid comes off the head and posterior little bit, not quite third, but head of the acromion and posterior third of it. And then of course comes down and inserts onto this deltoid tuberosity again. So that's pretty much it for the deltoids. Let's look at quads, since we're on the front. Quads all have the same insertion point on this tuberosity of the tibia here. And of course they have 4 branches, hence the name quad. So your vastus lateralis branch comes up here and originates off of the greater trochanter. Your rectus femoris has this insertion point and originates right here, just under the end of this iliac crest on the front side, okay? So it's the only of the 4 quad branches that crosses the hip joint, effectively making it a hip flexor as well, okay? And then moving medially from there, we have vastus medialis, same spot down here, and it originates, see this line where the shaft of the femur is like smooth and then it becomes kind of striated up here? The line in between the linea aspera here towards the lesser trochanter back here, this is where vastus medialis originates and then comes down to this same insertion on the tibial tuberosity. And then deep to all 3 of these, originating right off the bone at about the halfway mark, is your vastus intermedius. And it just comes off the bone and of course shares that same insertion point. Let's turn those around for glutes and look at the origin point coming off the posterior crest of the iliac and into the sacral region. That's the whole, that whole region is where it's originating from, and it inserts coming across the pelvis, crossing the hip joint, inserts onto the lateral neck of the femur. Calves are really 2 muscles. You're looking at a gastrocnemius and a soleus. Gastrocnemius inserts down here at the back of the calcaneus via the calcaneal tendon or Achilles tendon, which we've all heard of, and it comes all the way up here. The muscle belly is right around here, okay? But it inserts, or rather originates, with 2 heads that come up and over either side of these femoral condyles, okay? Up and over right there. So it crosses the knee joint. Deep to the gastrocnemius is the soleus, and it shares that same tendon insertion point, but it splits off in muscle belly, and it inserts without crossing this joint. It inserts on the posterior aspect of both the fibular head and neck and the tibia's neck back here as well. So it crosses this entire space. An origin point comes down, meets meets with the gastrocnemius via tendon and inserts on the back of the calcaneus. And that is the list of your prime movers and their origin and insertion points for the push press. Thanks, Ozai. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you found that helpful, or if you're finding my videos helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can stay up to date on all the good education I'm putting out here on Health and Fitness The Truth. You can also follow me on Instagram at Health Fitness Truth. Sometimes I post full workouts that you can follow. Sometimes I just post one little workout thing that you can get a good amount of education on. So be sure to check that out. We'll see you guys in the next video.